Hey guys, OG Albine here, bringing you guys our GG Inc. tournament top 64 game against Cheezitzz. If you guys have not seen our tournament run up to this point, I recommend you go check out the most recent, I don't know if it's the most recent video, it shouldn't be, but I'll go ahead and link in the description. There'll be a time card up here as well as the top, in which it shows off our games. Now, if you guys haven't though, and you want a quick rundown, GG Inc. is a multi-generational draft league tournament, so Gen 7, 8, and 9, in which we played through Swiss, I want to say brackets, but we played through like a Swiss round. We ended up going 6-1, so here we are in top 64 of brackets. Winner of the tournament can win a nice little chunk of money. It's a lot of fun though, and it's some pretty high level games, so I'm pretty excited to bring this to you guys. This is going to be our top 64 games. Playoffs or brackets are all going to be best of 3, so what that means is we have the possibilities of playing Gen 7, 8, and 9. The higher seed, which is me in this instance, picks the first matchup. The person who loses the first game picks the second matchup, and if it goes to that game 3 tiebreak, you play the leftover generation. So it should be a lot of fun. If you guys do enjoy, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel. On our way to 5,000 subs by the end of the year. I'd really appreciate if you help me out along that journey. Also, if it's a bit loud in the background, I apologize. There's vacuuming and the dogs are barking. I just don't have a better time to record than right now. I'm a bit busy guy, so we're gonna go ahead and run it. Like I said, we're playing against Cheezitzz right here, and he's got some pretty darn terrifying squads. Our first matchup is going to be in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Sorry, I'm tweaking. It is going to be in Sword and Shield. You can see he has a team consisting of Slowking Galar, Melmetal, Togekiss, Garchomp, Zarude, and Araquanid. Lots of scary things, but honestly, this matchup felt the most comfortable to me, especially offensively. I really like my offense in this game, so we're going to go ahead and look over the team real quick, kind of show you guys what we're rocking with. First up is going to be our Tapu Koko. We are heavy-duty boots variant, rocking out with Volt Switch, Dazzling Gleam, Thunderbolt, and Defog. Boots plus Defog is mostly in case there are webs that go up. Don't really have to worry about like Spike Stack or anything like that. This is Generation 8. Garchomp doesn't get spikes, so it's obviously nice. Boots rocks are also potentially pretty annoying, so depending on the situation, the Defog could come up clutch there. But really, this guy kind of just volts around forever on this team, right? When you have Ground-type Garchomp, I think we said it in our last Swish game that we showed against Dawn Mist in the last video, Ground-type Garchomp means Koko gets pretty free Volt Switches unless my opponent's playing really aggressively. He's rocking out with some kind of Roselli variant, something of the sort. So I really like my ability to Volt Switch around. Things like AV Cloaking are going to check me, but being able to get a Volt Switch out, do a chunk of damage, and get into my offense that breaks through Cloaking is a really nice thing. So that's why we're rocking out with Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, and then Thunderbolt's just kind of general damage output. Next up is Kartana. We're rocking out with an Expert Belt variant with Leaf Blade, Sacred Sword, Knockoff, and Smart Strike. Just 4 attacks. This Pokemon is incredibly strong. If you look at my opponent's team, there's actually nothing that naturally outspeeds it. It needs to be a Scarfer or Webs need to be up, hence the very important Defog on our Tapu Koko. In this game, we are rocking out with an Extra Belt because even if Glowking is max Fizz-Def and has no item, or it was like Cold Bear and I knocked it off earlier, whatever it may be, I do 2-hit KO with Knockoff. I think that's really important. Early game, Kart isn't going to pick up immediate crazy KOs with the likes of Glowking, with the likes of Melmetal, but as Pokemon like Koko Volt Switch around, Pokemon like Zygarde, which is next, and even our fatter things really will down Cheezitz's team, I really do see Kartana potentially getting 1+1 boost and smoking through this team. The combination of Knockoff and Sacred Sword does a ton of damage to things like Melmetal. You can take a Knockoff into a Sacred Sword if it's bulky initially, but like Knockoff into Sacred Sword, not good, especially considering we're Expert Belt. Then Glowking, like I said, gets blown up by Knockoffs, which is really nice. And then from there, Sacred Sword also is great for super effective coverage on Zarude, especially with that Expert Belt boost. Leaf Blade and Smart Strike are just spammable. Otherwise, Smart Strike for Togekiss, Leaf Blade for a ton of damage on Garchomp, and the Araquanid. Next up, we actually have an offensive Zygarde in this game. If you look at my opponent's team, they actually don't have great conventional ground resist. It's going to be Zarude, which gets blown up by a +1 or a +2 Skitter Smack if it's bulky. And then Stone Edge for the Araquanid, as it is a bug and is weak to rock. So that combination with 1,000 Arrows makes this Pokemon incredibly strong. However, again, my opponent's team is pretty darn slow, so we don't have to go the fastest in the world, allowing us to get a ton of bulk into our Zygarde. Yache Berry is for the likes of Ice Punching Melmetal, as well as the likes of Ice Beaming Glowking, and even random Ice Beam Araquanids. Just lets us take hits just a little bit better and find more setup opportunities. It does suck not fitting Dragon Move. I kind of wanted to fit Scale Shot for the Garchomp, but I really just felt like hitting Araquanid and the Zarude was just a little bit more important personally. Next up, we have a very Fizz-Def Jellicent. Rocking out with Rocky Helm. This is going to be checks 1 of 2 to the likes of Pokemon like Melmetal, Araquanid, even Garchomp, things like that. We're rocking out with the Hex, Will-O-Wisp, Recover, and Ice Beam set. The Hex obviously isn't doing a ton of damage to Araquanid, but it doesn't do anything back to us, and it attacking us means Rocky Helmet. So even if it's rocking out with like Crunch or something like that, we kind of just recover off all damage, whittle it down with the Hex, and I really like the combination of Will-O-Wisp plus Hex into the entirety of this team. Ice Beam also hits Zarude decently hard. Gotta be careful about weakness policy. That can obviously set up all over us if we Ice Beam it first, so if we are going to stand, much more likely to Willow that guy first, and then recover up. We're also not Strength Sap in this game because I wanted very reliable recovery into the likes of Glowking, as Willow Hex will beat down AV sets very well, and I don't know if it's going to be able to fit coverage for me on that set, and Psychic isn't going to be too KOing us because of our natural really high Spadef stat, which is awesome. We soft check Pokemon like Garchomp, we check Pokemon like Melmetal decently well as well. This is mostly going to be used for the likes of Garchomp, as Melmetal can kind of blow through us with like fast Thunder Punch variants, so got to be careful about that obviously, but pretty good check. Then our next check is going to be the main Melmetal check, and that is going to be Buzzwole. This also checks the likes of Zarude very well. We're rocking out with the 3 attacks Roost set. Rocky Helmet with Drain Punch, Ice Punch, Earthquake, and Roost. Pretty darn good coverage overall, too. We don't hit the Araquanid, but again, it's a Pokemon I'm not super worried about hitting me unless like a special Scalding variant. Again, that Pokemon's also stuffed by Jellicent unless it's Toxicking. So, I mean, Araquanid's annoying, but I don't expect it to be a long-term issue, if that makes any sense. The likes of Earthquake hits is a nice mid-ground click into Melmetal because it covers Glowking coming in. With 160 Adamant, we're probably 2 at KO and Glowking. I forget the exact calc, but we do a ton. Ice Punch hits the likes of Togekiss and Garchomp. Drain Punch gives us recovery and hits Zarude very hard. Ice Punch also just a nice neutral click into Garchomp and Zarude, as the Togekiss is probably going to be the most likely pivot in those instances, or in other instances at the very least. Maybe not in that, because they'd be expecting an Ice Punch. Then lastly, we have very physically defensive Mesprit. Again, just allows us to pivot into the likes of Garchomp pretty well. We're knockoff Ice Beam, U-turn, and Stealth Rock. Due to my opponent's speed tiers, we can pretty comfortably go minus speed, which means our knockoffs and our U-turns actually do a decent chunk to the likes of Glowking and Zarude, respectively. I also really love Rocks here. Rocks plus Knock into Pokemon like a Boots Glowking, like a Boots Togekiss, whatever it might be, is really going to help me whittle down this team and do a ton of damage. Citrus Berry helps us out a ton in Scale Shot variants of Garchomp, as that's probably one of the biggest threats to us in the late game if Pokemon like Buzzwole and Jellicent are whittled down by the likes of Melmetal and Zarude, so we want to be careful about that. Alrighty, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start off. We are going to choose to lead off this game with our Mesprit. I really like my early rocks. If it is an Araquanid need, I'm not obviously going to set up those rocks. I'm just going to U-turn out immediately, get out into the likes of Buzzwole, or Jellicent most likely, and deal with it from there. I could also potentially go into Koko just very aggressively, as they're not likely to water move on lead into something like Jellicent in the back, or my Buzzwole, or my Cart. You know, it's not the best offensively, to be completely honest, considering what we have on the team. So maybe we even make a hard Koko play. We don't have to think about that now, though. I'm kind of rambling about things that didn't happen, as we see a Glowking lead, and in my mind, this is a free knockoff. I don't need to get out my rocks immediately, but I do like knocking off the Araquanid if it comes in, and I like knocking off this AV. It's going to make Pokemon like Koko very strong. I also don't have to worry about Kartana hitting into a Colbur or anything like that, or no item, because like I said, Extra Belt does 2 at KO, so we're just going to have to be aggressive and keep this thing nice and low. We are going to go ahead and click that knockoff turn 1 and do 52, showing this is a very offensive variant, showing a life orb, doing 42% with the subsequent Sludge Bomb. We are just going to get up our rocks this turn on the Slack Off turn, so we've already revealed 2 of the mood slots. This also tells me that this is very likely to, even before this Ice Beam, not be Trick Room. It's very hard to fit Trick Room and Slack on one set. So it does show the Slack here and then Ice Beam, so it's likely Psychic in the last slot or some kind of Psychic move. Ice Beam there was obviously expecting a Zygarde pivot on a Sludge Bomb, but I do just end up knocking off again to keep this thing low, as in my mind, I want to force this thing into a Recover turn to get a free switch out. So we eat our Citrus Berry, we're back up nice and healthy, you still have our Ground Immunity, which is nice. This next turn, I am going to make that aggressive pivot, U-turn out into my Zygarde. Could they have made that Ice Beam play again? Yes, they could have, but I do have my Yachi Berry, so it's not the end of the world if they call me, and I really do think that they are going to try and slack off up in order to throw off attacks more consistently, as my Mesprit doesn't actually beat this thing 1v1 anymore that I've knocked it off, you know, with the Life Orb. I don't do them, you know, don't do enough damage. So we do see a slack off, I get that play correctly, and I'm going to find this as a DD opportunity. This is a very offensive set. I will blow this thing up with a +1 arrows because I'm offensive. They also have to be worried about Banded. They have a ton of things to think about, so I think a free Dragon Dance here is awesome. As we do see that your Araquanid pivot in, it shows to be Boots, so a very defensive variant. We Dragon Dance once, and I Dragon Dance again. The reason we Dragon Dance again, could I have 2 at KO this thing with Stone Edge? Yes, but I want to be able to 1 Oko Zarude if it's a bulky variant, and 2 outspeed Scarf Zarude / Scarf Garchomp. They could be very apprehensive and not want to go into their Garchomp, even if it's what do you call it? Even though it lives a +2 arrows, in the case that I am like Scale Shot or Outrage, because they don't want to lose that Pokemon as it's very strong here. So I want to get up and, you know, at least bluff that I could outspeed and Oko things. And hey, if we get a crit on the Garchomp or they don't go into it immediately, we're going to punch a crazy hole in this team, especially considering, like, you know, are they going to think of Skitter Smack or what are they going to do kind of thing. So we do see an Ice Beam pop here. And I mean, with the Yachi Berry, this is like a not very effective attack. Zygarde's so ungodly bulky. From this rate, I actually feel very comfortable just going for a Stone Edge. Bulkier variants of Garchomp actually can't kill me with Dragon Claw from this range, and I'll take keeping this guy around. Even if it can't DD later and it like Dragon Tails me out or something like that, I can throw off really strong 1000 arrows into this team or just have a nice sack. So I do Stone Edge as this will just 2-hit KO the hell out of this mon. Unfortunately, we do miss this next turn as another Ice Beam pops. Thankfully, we live another, which is good because this is a very physically defensive set. You see it does 92. We are going to live one more Ice Beam, and then we're going to pick this thing off with 1000 arrows. Now, the next turn, again, it really just depends on what my opponent is expecting. They could go into Zarude if they're like, I don't want to lose my Garchomp to an Outrage. But I think due to that miss, they're still much more likely, because even if I do kill their Garchomp, they'll at least kill me, and they won't have to like immediately go into Togekiss, either reveal Boots or not be Boots and take Rocks and kind of give me initial momentum. So this makes it a little bit easier. Not the end of the world, like I said. I'm totally fine with taking 60% on Garchomp, as this is a pretty darn bulky variant you see right here, as Dragon Claw does come out and it picks us off. And hindsight, it probably would have just killed us with D-Claw anyways, even if we didn't miss. So I can't be too upset. Mesprit is going to come out this next turn, as I am going to U-turn. Now, I know you might be thinking, Owen, why didn't you go into your Koko? I haven't seen an item yet. I know it's bulky. I haven't seen an item. Very, very possible for it to be Roselli Berry. And if it's a max HP Roselli Berry variant, which that damage told me it could have been, right? With how well it took that 1000 arrows, I don't actually kill with a Dazzling Gleam. So I didn't feel comfortable stacking off my Koko, as it looks incredibly strong, especially once this Garchomp dies. Once this Garchomp dies, I'm Volting forever. And there's nothing my opponent can realistically do to stop me. As I do get into my Koko now, even after U-turn, if it is going to be some kind of Roselli variant, it died, but it also showed to be Rocky Helmet there. I have my sack and Mesprit. It's very low, but I felt like that was a play I felt very comfortable in making. This upcoming turn, I am going to Volt, and again, Dazzling Gleam, Rocks, Volt, keeps the Slowking really, really low, and is really going to help out that Kartana endgame, as Psychic does pop this upcoming turn. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get into my Kartana. Like I said, even Fizdef would die to knock off from 50%. I minimum do that with my Expert Belt, so I am just going to knock off, do a ton of damage to the Melmetal and switch in, or pick off this Garchomp sack as they sack it to get some Helmet Chip, which is fair. Not too worried, I don't really need health on this guy. Togekiss is going to come out next, and you're going to see it takes Rocks. So this tells me one of two things. It's either a Choice Scarf Togekiss, and it's going to blow me up, or it's a Babiri Berry variant. Either of which is decently likely. Regardless, I'm not willing to sack off my Kartana, as I find it very, very strong in this game. It's also a Sludge Bomb Mutiny, so it gives me an aggressive play into that. And it's also a Pokemon that can do a ton of damage to the likes of Zarude, or even maybe like an Iron Defense Melmetal or something like that, if that variant does come. So I'm going to make that Koko pivot. I am Boots, so I take these hits pretty darn well. Only does 26. I'm just going to Volt. Terrain goes down, but still a very free Volt switch. Volt comes out. Low-King comes out. Back into Cart we go, and another free knockoff. So this offensive positioning with Kartana is proving to be really, really advantageous. As this Melmetal comes in, takes his knockoff, loses its leftovers. It doesn't die now, but after it takes any helmet damage, it does. So we are going to make that pivot out into our Buzzwole. Covers a Thunder Punch middle ground. They make an aggressive play and go for a Toxic right here. Very solid play on my opponent's end. They're going to catch my Buzzwole. They're going to go for a Protect. And again, knocking off that leftovers is proving to be very, very beneficial, because now this thing isn't gaining that passive recovery. This upcoming turn, I Earthquake on a Protect. They're going to make the play into Slowking, as I believe I Ice Punch, expecting an aggressive Togekiss. But thankfully, due to how offensive we are, we actually 2-hit KO this Slowking, which is great for me. Absolutely incredible. This puts my opponent in a really uncomfortable position, because I very easily can just Ice Punch again, do a ton of damage to this to actually kill this Togekiss after Rocks. We're very offensive. Do a ton of damage to Zarude, which will basically put it in range of like Helmets or Card or whatever ends up happening. Or kill this Slowking. So my opponent makes an aggressive play here, and I am going to call it out, since they are going to go into Melmetal, as I Earthquake mid-ground. I didn't expect the Togekiss ever. That Pokemon dies, and if it is like a Scarf variant, it's actually a very viable win con for my opponent. So this Adamant Earthquake is going to do 48% to this Melmetal, which is awesome. We're taking more and more toxic damage, but what I can do this turn is I can just go ahead and throw off a Roost, as a double Iron Bash hits me, and they go down to the 1 helmet turn. Now, you'll see I'm at 20% right here. I'm willing to sack this off to whatever comes in. Zarude comes in, gonna Drain Punch. what do you call it, Tokus comes in, I'm going to Ice Punch. It also gives me more information. If it's a Babiri variant, it's in range of, what do you call it, Sport Strike at that point. And if it's Scarf, it's Scarf. It at least gives me a free switch into my Koko to Volt out. What my opponent's going to do is they're going to go into Glow King. And this is a very, very telegraphed play. I know we're trying to get Regen back right here, right? Maybe they can call my bluff, but even then, Ice Punch does about 30+%, right? We saw that before. So even if I get that play wrong, and I Ice Punch and they stay in and, you know, go for a Slack Off or whatever it may be, or if they attack for some reason, I can immediately get out into something like Kartana, I can get into something like Jellicent, throw off a Will-O-Wisp. I'm going to put myself in a good spot to where I feel very comfortable making the play, saying, okay, they're going to pivot out into either Togekiss or Zarude, trying to get some regen back. They are going to make the Togekiss play, and I am going to Ice Punch and absolutely blow this up. And from this point, I feel very, very confident in this game, and that my opponent can't really do much to stop me at this point. We are going to get an attack boost as we go down. Kartana is going to come out on this Zarude right here. Now, this does give me some information if this is going to be a Scarf variant. However, Scarf really does have trouble locking into my team. I guess there is the potential of it locking into like a Power Whip or something similar. So we have to be very careful about that. Regardless, I am just going to Sacred Sword, do a ton of damage to the thing. If it's not like a Scarf close combat, it does bulk up right here as we Sacred Sword, do 84%, just barely missing on the KO. I would be able to revenge it, but it does unfortunately show a Salac Berry. However, thankfully, it can't be Trailblaze, so that's obviously why it was Salac instead. Obviously, the move doesn't exist yet. And we do have our double Helmet and Jellicent. We have not revealed that we are Helmet Jellicent, but what we can do to secure this endgame is we're going to go into Jellicent, Acrobatics pops, and it does go down there. I wasn't super worried about like a Synthesis or Jungle Healing. I don't think you can fit that in this matchup ever. So we're going to put ourselves in a position where all we have to do is keep this Slow King nice and low. We're only doing 31 with Hex, so really not a lot of damage at all. I'm just going to kind of spam it a little bit. Don't pick up the KO right there as my opponent goes for Slack Off. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to click Willow. If worst case, they Slack here, not the end of the world. They're going to go ahead and Slack Off again. And from here, I can always Hex, do 65%. And now they're guaranteed in range of Cart, Koko, whatever we want to go into. Figure Cart put in the most work this game, so it should get the final KO. And we are going to go ahead and take down the Slow King, winning game 1 of our best of 3. And by the way, I don't think like a full league of best of 3 is a good idea, but like in these playoff situations, oh my god, was it intense. It was very fun. I was shaking the entire game. It was a pretty fun, close game, you know. It wasn't like I washed or anything like that. So I really like that aspect of it. I was really excited going into the next one. And the next one, Cheezitzz gets to pick the format. Now, I haven't gone over it yet because we haven't gotten to the matchups, but in Generation 9, they allowed Spectre and Amon. Not good. But we have Big Bear Ursaring on our team, and obviously we brought in the matchup. And it kind of puts that guy in jail, and his Switch matchup wasn't, or the Scarlet and Violet matchup wasn't the best. It was definitely my second best matchup, in my opinion, outside of this one. So, Cheezitzz ended up picking Gen 7, so that's going to be our second game of the series. We're going to go ahead and jump on into that. Alrighty, here we are with our Generation 7 game against Cheezitzz. He is a terrifying team in Usum. Lots of scary hyper offense. He has the likes of Mega Diancie, Landorus Incarnate, the Hawlucha, Deoxys Defense, Fortress, who's terrible, but the rest of the team's scary, and a Z Manaphy, which is really scary, to be completely honest. There was also a Tapu Bulu that was Z that was left on the bench, hence the Hawlucha, but Tapu Bulu was really bad into my team. Obviously, Tangrowth, Scolipede, Nidoking, Torn. But yeah, I mean, this might be the worst matchup for Tapu Bulu ever, but we do still see the Hawlucha, which is very scary. We have to be very cognizant of that and how we're going to beat that. Let's go ahead and take a look at our team right here. Now, first up is going to be our Tornadus Therian. We are a very physically defensive set. However, that doesn't mean we're not incredible offensively. We're not going with Hurricane, Taunt, U-Turn, and Hidden Power. Steel. If you look at my opponent's team, their only flying resist is going to be Mega Diancie, which gets blown up by a Hidden Power Steel. Very nice aspect of Big Torn here, which is awesome. Other than that, Hurricane is very free. Now, you see we have barely any speed. We're actually only creeping him, creeping Kyurem. This sucks because we do have a Victini. Unfortunately, I could not get the amount of physical defense that I needed to check Hawlucha, which is by far the big threat to our team, without going this spread. So we are kind of creeping him, creeping down. Well, that's be most of his fat. But if something like Manaphy doesn't want to creep and speed tie a Victini or something of the sorts, we will outspeed it. Other than that, all of his offense is really going to outspeed our Torn. We can kind of bluff otherwise, and being how bulky we are, we don't need to outspeed everything. Not outspeeding Mega DNC is kind of tough, though. We kind of have to bluff that if we want to, or catch on the switch with the Hidden Power Steel. But I don't expect DNC to switch in very often anyways to us. With our physical defense, we can live a +2 Atom and Acrobatics from full if no rocks are up. However, I feel very confident in my ability to keep away rocks with our Mega Blastoise, and we'll talk about that soon. Next up is going to be Choice Scarf Victini. We have V-Create, U-Turn, Bull Strike, and Trick. The reason that we have a Scarf Victini here is because I want to guard against like bulky Calm Mind variants of Manaphy. We deal pretty well with like Tail Glow variants with our AV Tangrowth, but I really don't like the prospect of it setting up all over my Tangrowth, right? So I want to have the ability to just Bolt Strike through that guy, put a ton of damage on it, and then go into something like our Scolipede in the back to revenge it. Gonna have to be very careful about that, but I felt like that was important. Trick is gonna be nice for Pokemon like Deoxys that are gonna try and switch in, especially if they're like Rocky Helmet variants. It'll be nice to cripple them. And then V-Create and U-Turn just do a ton of damage. The main fire resist is Manaphy, which we hit with a Bull Strike, and Mega Diancie, which is a Mega Diancie, so I'm totally fine with hitting it with a Bolt Strike. Then we have our Mega Blastoise, which is incredible in this game at keeping away hazards. For Water Pulse, Dark Pulse, Toxic, and Rapid Spin. A very offensive variant, but bulky enough to live pretty much one or two of anything, right? Like, I think we live 2 Landers hits, I think we live +2 Hawlucha hit, whatever it may be. But what's awesome about this guy is that we're playing into like Spike Stack with like Dio and Foray, but there's no spin blocker. So Dio underspeeds, or this is going to underspeed Dio, which is awesome because we always get a slow Rapid Spin off. So if we Toxic it, and then can kind of span Rapid Spin forever from there, which is obviously nice. Water Pulse, Dark Pulse hits this team incredibly hard. Toxic is going to be mainly for that Deoxys so that it can't, you know, stall us out if it's like especially defensive variant for Dark Pulses or whatever it may be. Or if it tries to put us on the timer with like a Toxic or something like that, we can do so back. Also for non-Rain Dance variants of Manaphy, but it's not really the intended purpose of the Toxic there, so just keep that in mind. It's mostly for Deoxys. Then we have our Tangrowth, rocking out the Assault Vest here, very specially defensive, but pretty offensive as well. Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Knockoff, and Hidden Power Ice. Does really well offensively in this game, to be honest. We check Pokemon like Diancie very well. We even soft check Pokemon like Landorus, and like Rocks and like a Giga Drain into Hidden Power Ice is always going to blow it up. It might even just be Rocks into Hidden Power Ice. I forget the exact calc. Or maybe it's just Giga Drain to Hidden Power Ice. I know like a combination of 2 things always kills it, which is great. We do a decent chunk to Hawlucha as well, which is nice if it is weakened when it's trying to set up on us. Sludge Bomb is going to be for likes of Tapu Bulu as well, which didn't come. Knockoff gets rid of items on guys like Fortress, our Landorus if it likes to pivot Harden or whatever it may be. Kind of helps us out a little bit. We can also live Earth Power into Sludge Wave from Landorus. Next up we have Scolipede, yes, double Z. I understand we have a Z Crystal on Torn. That is only there in order to guaranteed hit Hawlucha, not miss, so we don't lose the game because of it. However, if we can afford to not use that luxury, Z Scolipede is really strong. I think Fortress is terrible. I think I can kill it early. At least I expect it to come in early if it's showing up. And if I can do that, this combination of moves is incredibly strong. I can even just Swords Dance and win the game. Poisonium Z is going to blow up guys like the Hawlucha. Poisonium Z also does a ton to Pokemon like Manaphy, and even Pokemon like Diancie if I don't want to risk missing an Aqua Tail. Mega Hornet +2 blows up Pokemon like Deoxys, and then Poisonium Z is also for Hawlucha to not let it live a hit from us and like Citrus up and then kill us instead of whatever it may be, right? And Aqua Tail is for likes of Landers. That's pretty much it. So yeah. Then lastly, we have our lead in Nidoking. We are an Earth Power, Ice Beam, Toxic Spikes, and Taunt variant. Decently offensive, but Shuka to where we can deal with really the 2 most common, or the 3 most common leads I'm expecting this game. I'm expecting a potential Fortress lead, which we taunt and scare out, or just scare out immediately. I'm expecting a Landorus lead because it's pretty strong on my team offensively, or a Mega Diancie lead to secure the Mega, deal with like potential Scarf Victini leads or even Tornadus leads or whatever it may be, right? So having the Shuka Berry is going to allow me to blow up those guys. Shuka Earth Power, Shuka Ice Beam, whatever it may be. Toxic Spikes are incredible here for the likes of Deoxys, for the likes of Manaphy, whatever they are. Really going to whittle down the team, and Taunt prevents opposing hazards from going up. Also from slower variants of Deoxys if that ends up being the case. Alrighty, that being said, let's do it. So we are going to lead off with our Nidoking. Like I said, we see a lead Landorus. I decide that it's not worth getting off an Ice Beam. If they think they can stay in and kill me, they're going to do so. They could also be Yachi or Sash. Either way, I want this Ice Beam damage off because from there, this Pokemon is not too big of an issue. We're going to see an Earth Power. We do live that. It also just to not be Life Orb. We had EV for Life Orb, so it's just to not be Life Orb. It is Sash. It's going to live on 1%. I'll make the pivot out into Tornadus. They could have made the Psychic play, but I live 2 Psychics. They could have also made the Broadside play, but I live 1 and then can just like sack something afterwards. Plus, I threaten the outspeed here. So out comes the Deoxys next. I am just going to U-turn, reset tempo, reset momentum. Deoxys is going to be the mon that comes out, as Blastoise is going to be my initial pivot. Nothing switches into this Pokemon. Nothing really wants to take us Toxic that could maybe switch into it like a Spadef Manaphy. And if it's a Rest, I find that out early. So I am just going to Mega Evolve and throw off a Toxic as rocks go up. But like I said, this is completely fine. I know rocks are never going to go up on my side of the field and stay up as long as I have my Blastoise around and healthy. Manaphy is going to be the pivot out as rocks go away. I'm going to make an aggressive pivot into Victini here. Manaphy and Hawlucha are definitely the 2 most threatening Pokemon to me. Manaphy especially. I don't expect a water move here. Either expect a setup or a grass move to come out here immediately. Energy Ball does come out. I'm fine with that. I'm just going to throw off a Scarf Bolt Strike. If this is Scarf, then I'm fine because it's Scarf to Energy Ball. And if not, I get off a big hit, doing 71% to this thing. Ton of damage. We do live the Surf, which does 84. Then I make the play onto Landers. I felt no reason to overpredict or get out. I could have gone into Tangrowth, but really there's no need. Tornadus is going to be the pivot out here, as we do take 53 from this Rock Slide. And I won't lie to you, I kind of forgot my speed tiers, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, they're creeping down to Kyurem, which we have on the bench, obviously. Completely disregarding the fact that I have a Victini on my team. So I would like to mention this play right here, big blunder by me. I don't actually outspeed. So do they think I outspeed, and are they worried about me just killing them with a U-turn? Yes, so it's kind of safe to U-turn. But I don't think I did it for the right reasons. And they could have just sacked off their Torn and killed, or their Lando and killed my Torn and not sacked off their guy. So I am just going to U-turn out, get a little bit of regen back. 24. Mega Blastoise is going to come out, and this is a very, very free Dark Pulse right here. This does a ton of damage to Deoxys. It doesn't actually kill it, but that's preferable to me, right? Because it's going to get a little bit of toxic damage off on it. It can recover right here, but I'm slower. I always get off this Rapid Spin, which is absolutely incredible, ensuring that rocks are gone for the game, unless it's double rocks with Fortress. Manaphy's going to be a switch out. I don't want to take an Energy Ball at all. There's no reason for me to take damage. Blastoise is still healthy enough to take hits from like Hawlucha, Landers, DNC, whatever it is. Sub-Zero so Z Ice comes out, doesn't take out my Tangrowth as I am very specially defensive, and Assault Vest, so we pick it off with a Giga Drain. Next up, my Tornadus is going to come out on the Hawlucha, clicking Swords Dance right here. It is forced out because it hasn't popped the Unburden yet, and that's what they think is going to happen. I double out here though, because I was worried about Sky Attack. I knew I didn't outspeed max speed Hawlucha at the very least. So this does tell my opponent that they do outspeed me with their Hawlucha, which is going to very much so matter later in the game. I was trying to burn the Sky Attack, as I assume it is a Sky Attack variant, being that it's shown Swords Dance, so that I could live, 1, I would die to Sky Attack, but 2, live the +2 Acrobatic from full. I go to Nidoking to sack it off, they go DNC. I see no reason to not just sack off my Nidoking. I go for Earth Power, but they're going to kill me. So down we go. Mega Blastoise is going to be my pivot of choice. Moonblast is 41 and does unfortunately get a special attack drop, which sucks for a multitude of reasons, as my Water Pulse does 82, isn't going to knock this thing out. Does get the Confusion, and we do let it hit itself in Confusion. So not killing it doesn't matter, right? Because it killed itself to the Confusion. What does matter is now I don't 2-hit KO Hawlucha with a Water Pulse, which is very, very scary for me. I am going to pivot out into my Tornadus immediately, as Sky Attack does pop, does a massive 60%, and this is obviously bad for me, but that's the beauty of regen and the beauty of me being able to keep away Stealth Rock in this game. What I can do, because I am so physically defensive, is I can kind of pivot around, play the sack game, get rid of a few guys that I don't need, as there are a few, especially in Victini, Tangrowth, whatever they may be. Victini and Tangrowth probably are the ones I don't need the most. Potentially the Scolipede as well, and get my Tornadus back up to full so that I can take a hit and throw off a Z flying. I'm going to sack off Victini initially. They make a great play and go for a Swords Dance, which covers, my Torn coming back in the next turn and just blowing them up. So that's obviously a very, very solid play from the opponent. I am going to go ahead and die to the Acrobatics here. Tornadus comes out. We need one more switch in order to get back up to full. We're going to sack off our Tangrowth, as it doesn't really beat anything left outside of maybe the 1% Landorus. And then lastly, we go back onto our Torn. We do just barely live that +2 Acrobatics. We always did, unless we got crit. And we're going to knock this thing out with a Supersonic Sky Strike, putting ourselves in prime position to win. Unfortunately, we are going to die to the Rock Slide. Hindsight, I probably should have sacked Scolipede. Again, this is me forgetting that I don't outspeed Landorus on the set that I went with. If they are creeping Victini, just me forgetting about my own Victini. I don't need Scolipede at this point. I might even live a Rock Slide, and then I can like pick it off with a Poison Jab or an Aqua Tail, whatever it might be. And then still have my Torn, which beats down Fori really, really well. So it's a bit unfortunate. Not the end of the world. We go down to our Scolipede. I am just going to Poison Jab and kill this guy. And then out comes the Fortress. I am just going to Aqua Tail this, or I'm going to Sword Stance this first turn in case they don't Gyro. They Volt Switch here, expecting the Blastoise to come in, I suppose. I guess I should have just Gyroed. Regardless, it doesn't matter too much. Aqua Tail do a little bit of damage. +2 doing that little is really funny. So Fortress does what it does well. And we're going to go into Blastoise though, and it does what it does bad. Very bad. We always 2-hit kill with Water Pulse. It does hit itself. Doesn't matter. Crit Volt Switch didn't kill me. And if they boomed, they lost. So we were fine from that position. We Water Pulse again. And we're able to take home a victory, moving on to top 32. I was really happy with how I played in this set, outside of like the Tornadus blunder, which was a bit silly, and then not sacking the the Scolipede. Really happy with how I played the Generation 8 game. The Generation 7 game we played pretty well. Didn't even have to play Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet. So that's obviously nice. If you guys did enjoy this best of 3 and enjoyed kind of how I presented it, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel. Like I said, 5K subs by the end of the year. I'd appreciate it a ton. And yeah, next Thursday we'll be in top 32. I believe we are playing against Blind Messiah. I actually play that tomorrow morning as of recording this, so hopefully we do good and you'll have a top 16 video as well. If not, top 32 next week, and we'll see. But yeah, I appreciate y'all. Drop a like, enjoy, sub for new. See ya.